Thank you, Valbona Zeneli, for shifting the focus a little bit and reminding us one of the alternative sides of security studies, that is, say, economic development, focus on the EU and Europe, and perhaps reminding us that there are weak links here as well, even as one thinks of the kinds of problems that Europe will have to confront, or that Europe is going to be asked to confront. It made me think also that if you're in government or if you're working in an international organization, lots of people are going to come to you and say, well, my problem is more important than your problem, and we need to find a way, always, in public service to create a hierarchy or prioritize. And is it easy to say that problems in Southeast Europe are more important than problems in the Middle East for the future of the European Union? It's a rather difficult thing for me to decide at any rate. At this point, I think we'll open the floor to questions. We have about 15, maybe 20 minutes on the outside for questions. I would like to do it this way, maybe to field 3, 4 questions at a time and let our speakers react to those questions. And I'll ask that you state your name, your affiliation, and make your questions brief. Let's not have any statements or mini speeches as we go along, hard as it is to resist the temptation. Do I have someone on the floor that wants to take the first question? Gentleman over here. We'll take 3 questions, so the ladies with the mics will go around. Another question, gentleman in the gray, and then right next to you, the white hair. Okay. Name and affiliation, brief question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Lieutenant Commander Nicholas Metaxas from John War College. I would like to ask Mr. John Solomon. Sir, you spread some cyber fear among us. I would like to ask, can you give us some facts or evidence or data from your research about the capabilities that terrorist groups have from the Middle East? Thank you, sir.
Next question was the gentleman in the middle table in the back there. You raised your hand. Gray suit. Name and affiliation, short question, please.
My name is Lieutenant Colonel Minka. I'm working in NDC Greece, Romanian Army. My question is related to his question, but in your presentation, you made a statement that it's going to be a cyber attack. So I want to know what is your opinion based on what? Because it's not an assessment. You said it's a statement. So it's going to be for sure, as far as I know.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
The gentleman with white hair just behind you. All right, great. Name, affiliation, short question, please.
I'm Colonel Panagiotis Chanos, Greek Army from NDC Greece. I want to address a question to Mr. Liberti. It has to do with immigration. You said that immigration is a potential threat. Okay, from the beginning, I'm going to say that I agree. However, I'm going to be the devil's advocate. So, Mr. Solomon said that radicalization is also a threat. So if we combine both, we may see that immigration, and you didn't differentiate between legal and illegal, immigration is a potential threat. And from this threat, we can somehow isolate radicalization. In all honesty, I haven't seen any common policy to counter immigration as a threat. We have the example of the United States, but the United States is somewhat isolated by the oceans. It's not the same in Europe. So my question is there any common EU policy, and what should we expect? Should we expect a policy to stop, to ban illegal immigration, to assimilate the immigrants, to accept ghettos? What?
Okay. Maybe one more question. Does anyone else have a question either on the theme of immigration or on the issue of cyber attacks, cyber threats? Okay, if I have no questions, then I'll turn the microphones over to the panel. Maybe we'll start with you, Dan.
Right, thank you for your questions. I get asked this question quite a lot, actually. One of the problems with cybersecurity is that the majority of what is going on is classified. There's very little out in the public domain about what is really going on and what their offensive capabilities really are, who the state actors are behind some of these things, and what our capabilities are in defense of them. And I think in many regards it needs to stay that way. What I can tell you is that I am involved in cybersecurity in quite a considerable way. Some of our team were involved in some of the analysis on Stuxnet, and we run a cyber intelligence program, which means that we can look at the evolving DNA within certain types of malware and see where something like Stuxnet is being taken and adapted. It's very straightforward to then project what capabilities the future cyber weapons may contain. Another thing that we do is that we speak a fair amount at some of the white hat conferences, things like DEF CON. So we mix in the right circles. We mix with the people that are very well informed on the evolution and development of new cyber capabilities. And we've seen the analysis of things like Duku quite recently, where things are going. In terms of my assertion about cyber attacks and on what that's based, there's been a fair amount of what I would call cyber reconnaissance in the last year. So some of the dark elements behind cyber attacks have been probing to find weaknesses in infrastructure. And there's plenty in the news and on the web in terms of discussion of what these vulnerabilities are and where they are. What isn't really discussed is the full extent of vulnerabilities that we face, because it would be counterproductive if we put that into the public domain. You know, it would help our attackers to target certain assets. But what is clear is that a degree of reconnaissance has been conducted. If you talk to any of the operators of critical infrastructure, some of them are under constant barrage. They are being constantly attacked in different ways, so that the black hatters that spend their life developing ways of accessing systems are always one step ahead of where our security mitigation steps are at the moment. So I hope that answers your questions to a degree. My sense is, first of all, that after the current state of reconnaissance, that they will move to action. I'm also convinced, and I've heard from other colleagues, that the capabilities of Hezbollah are not to be underestimated. They are very good, and I think the CIA was publicly quoted as saying that they are a considerable adversary in the cyber domain. So it's almost inevitable at some point that the reconnaissance they're conducting will turn into attack. And I think it's only inevitable, given the current state of defense, cyber defense, when you look at the attack capabilities, that our defenses are going to be breached. There is such a gap, and a widening gap there, that particularly in some countries in Europe, we are very vulnerable. Is that okay?
I will reply on the immigration, but before, just a quick word on the question of cyber attack. I totally agree with Dan when he says that potentially we are, I mean, cyber attack is one of the kind of attacks we should expect for the future. At the same time, saying there will be a cyber attack this year, well, this reminds me of someone else saying Iraq has nuclear weapon or nuclear bacteriological weapon. I think when we speak we can still compete. The European Union is still the first economy in the world. We are the first donor of humanitarian aid. We are the first regulator in the world. We have many assets. We just need, instead of being like Cassandra, we just need to be confident, to look at our strength, to be positive for the future, and to be more, to be a little bit more positive, I think.
I'll just mention something about the cyber attacks. I fully agree with Dan. And actually, we should, remember that cyber attacks might be against individuals, businesses, but also against states. And we should not forget the two events in 2007, 2008 in Estonia and Georgia that had such a kind of cyber attacks. So the thing is, what is needed to be done? Actually, in Estonia, there is the NATO Center for Excellence that studies these issues, the Center of Excellence for Cybersecurity. So more cooperation, we still go back to the cooperation. More cooperation is needed. Legislation should be changed. There are some countries that don't have legislation at all to counter, cyber attacks, or coordination within countries, and still more technological research, since states seems to be, a step back to people that, deal with cyber attacks.
Yeah, I'd like to address the question about borders, actually. I agree with my colleague's point that Europe requires immigration because we need population growth. I also appreciate where you're coming from in terms of concern over borders. There is a lot of very good and difficult work being conducted in Europe by Border Patrol, and there is no doubt that the threat to Europe of proliferation is very much being treated seriously by Border Patrol and by other agencies that are specifically trying to address the issues of our borders. So that shouldn't be underestimated in any means. Hawk is involved in a EU project that specifically is developing the use of intelligence in order to strengthen borders management. And that goes hand in hand with technology, obviously, the advancement of biometrics, and so on and so forth, including e-passports. I don't think that we should take our eye off the ball when it comes to borders management. The problem that we face with terrorism is that we're looking for, a grain of sand on a beach in terms of the one container that contains the threat, or the handful of people that cross the borders with malicious intent. And I think that threat exists for every EU member.